NA students, I'm so glad that you made it to LifeGroup today. My name is Cole, and I serve as the junior high pastor here at the 2-Day campus, and I'm fired up that you made it today. Something that I say all the time is that I believe you are here for a reason. You're here for what? You're here for a reason. And man, just hear me today. The God of all creation, who created the universe, the stars, the planets, the trees, your dog, your cat, your gerbil, God has you here today for a reason. Man, and I don't know why God brought you here today. It might be hear something in this video. It might be to meet a new friend. I'm not sure why, but I know that God has you here for a reason. And man, regardless of what brought you here today, I know that here at Life Groups, you are going to create community and you're going to deepen your faith. That's what's going to happen all the time. Because something I know for a fact, man, is that church is more fun when you have people in it. Man, having people at church that you can just text before Sunday morning and you can sit down with and you can learn with is so much fun. You can get together before church, go to church together, go home or go eat lunch together after church and talk about what you learned. Man, having people is so much better. It's how we get better at church. Man, it's how we become more like Jesus at church. And I believe that Life Groups is where you can find those people. And I'll be honest, that's where I found my people, was church. And man, I think today, as we get ready to be in our groups, in our 5th and final week of Life Groups for the semester, we together are going to be continuing to learn that the Bible is the way that God has designed for us to learn from and about Him. Last week, we learned about resting in God's Word. And this week is tying everything that we learned together to ultimately being changed by God's Word. Right? Because in weeks 1 through 4, man, we saw and we heard and we learned a lot of new things. You got a lot of new information kind of floating around that head of yours. And man, right now, what we're going to do in week 5 is we're going to take the time to take all of that knowledge that we got, man, all of the amazing things that we've learned in the last 4 weeks, and we're going to learn how to put it into action. We're going to take all of that knowledge and we're going to put it into action. In James chapter 1, verse 22, it says this. It says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, but it says do what? Do what it says. And man, for us today, something I think about, man, I think we forget this one thing. I think we forget that change comes by action. Change comes by action. And I'm going to say that a lot today because we can know all of the right things, right? We can know how we're supposed to live and we can know what we should do, but if we don't actually do it and have action with the things we know, we're never going to change. And man, that's what I love about God's Word, is that God's Word will tell you exactly what you need to do to change. And man, that's what I need. I need someone telling me exactly what to do and how to do it. Like, for example, if you wanted to learn how to cook, let's say you wanted to become a chef. I've got 2 options here. Would you choose Gordon Ramsay or would you choose this guy in option B? Which one do you choose? You choose an A or B? Say it out. What are you choosing? Right, you'd probably choose an A, right? Okay, hear me out. Let's say you want to learn how to play football. Let's say you want to be a quarterback. Are you going to learn from Tom Brady or are you going to learn from Pastor Alex? Like, choose A or B. What are you going to choose, A or B? Right? You're going to choose Tom Brady. Like, that's just the way you do it. You're going to choose Tom Brady. And like, let's say you wanted to learn how to eat a cupcake in a single bite. Would you choose me or would you choose me? A or B, right? There's no wrong answer there, right? But it's so simple. There's a single answer. It's an obvious answer for each one. And here's the thing. Just like there's an obvious answer with learn how to cook and learn how to play football and learn how to eat a cupcake in a single bite, because yes, that's exactly how I eat my cupcakes, one bite. If you want to live a godly life, the only answer, the obvious answer, is that you need to go to God's Word. Because the first thing you need to know today is that God's Word instructs our life. In Matthew chapter 7, it says this. It says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did what? It did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. And man, what I love about God's Word is it tells us exactly what we need to do to live a godly life. When we build our life on God's word, his word will show us how to live. Man, the word gives us examples, I think, of great men and great women who followed the word and how their life was better because they built their life instructed by God's word. A couple of examples are like this. People like David, who went from being a shepherd boy to being a king. People like the judge Deborah, who judged the people of Israel and guided them to be more like God. Paul, who went from being a murderer to being a missionary. People whose lives were better because God instructed their life. They built their life on the rock. That is God's word. And I'll tell you today, so can you. So if you, man, I just think, if you want to learn how to be a better man or a better woman of God, you don't need to go to the world, you got to go to the word. If you want to learn how to be the best son or the best daughter, you don't go to YouTube, you don't go to social media, you go to the word. If you want to learn how to get free from sin, you go to the word. You see, the word tells us how to be different. It tells us how to love people well. It tells us how to solve conflict. It tells you how to be disciplined. It tells us the ways how your speech and action should be different. It tells us how our whole life should be seen by others. Man, if you want to help people know Jesus, man, in Manville, in Friendswood, in Alvin, in Pearland, and Webster, man, you got to go to the word. You want to learn how to share the gospel with your friends? Don't go to the world, go to the word. Because if you want to learn how to pray, you got to go to the word. And I'll tell you right now, if you want to learn how to live a godly life, you go to the word. But you see, I think that's where we struggle. Is I think that there are a lot of times when we're torn between doing what we want and living a godly life and then just living a good life. Man, I think for us today, like, we fight that feeling of, man, what my friends are doing at school and what I'm seeing on social media, man, like, that looks good, but it just might not be godly. But I'll tell you today, I think we choose to live how the world wants us to live oftentimes, and not follow how God instructs us to live. We will choose to fall into pressures given by culture and the world because we think it's good. We think it's good enough. But here's the thing. That stuff might seem good for a little while, right? Being in that relationship, messing up in those ways, or scrolling on TikTok for too long, or being caught up in addiction, or doing the things that your friends are doing that you know you shouldn't be doing, or lying to your parents, or whatever your thing is. It might seem good just for a little while, but I'll tell you something for sure, that in the end, a life built on what the world has to offer will not stand. It says this, continuing in Matthew chapter 7, it says that everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice, you say it like this, who does not give them action, is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it did what? It fell with a great crash. I'll tell you right now, when our foundation is built on the world, we will fall. When we follow what the world tells us to do, we will fall. If we all think that about how good we have it or how good we look or who we date or how strong or fast we are, whatever it might be, when we are built on our pride with our sport and our grades and the college we're going to, the second a storm comes, you're going to fall. I think today, what I know to be true, that when we put those things aside and we do what God says to do, we change, because the change comes by action. But it takes you following what the word says to succeed. Because when we follow God's instruction, we succeed. That's the second need to know today, is that when we follow God's instructions, we succeed. And I was just thinking, man, one time I love sweets, right? So I eat cupcakes in one bite. I love sweets. So I tried my hand in making cookies. Should be very easy to do. It's hard to mess up making cookies. But I tried this time to do it by scratch. So I tried making the Cho cookies from Revive Weekend. Let me tell you, they were terrible. They were terrible. I couldn't follow the directions, right? I had too much of one thing, too little of another thing. I made the cookie dough, like the little like knobs and globs of cookie dough. I made those too big, and so it was crazy. Like, I got them out of the oven. They were burnt on the outside, but raw in the middle. Like, they were awful. And so what I had to do from then on, because I couldn't follow those directions correctly, I got to stick with the classic Nestle Toll House, which are just as delicious. Stick with the classic Nestle Toll House because the instructions are easy. They're easy to follow. It's easy to succeed. You follow the instructions, you're going to have incredible cookies every single time, right? Cookies are the best thing ever. But I think today, man, whichever of those recipes you follow, that if you will succeed if you follow the instructions. And I was just thinking of a great verse that kind of works with this. James 1:22, verse 25 says this. It says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. It says, do what it says. We read that earlier, but it goes on to say this. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law, that is the word, that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. And I wish I could tell you today that following the word and doing what it says is as easy as making Nestle Toll House Pillsbury cookies. But it's not. It takes work to follow the word. And it takes time. But I know that you can take the time and commit to it. You guys commit to so many things, and you do them well. You commit to your sports, your school, your video games, your Netflix shows. So I know that if you commit to action, you will change. Because change comes by action. And I believe that you can become the man or woman of God that God has called you to be. Whether you're in 5th grade or you're a senior in high school. If you follow his instruction, you can succeed. But it takes you doing it. It takes doing what we've learned in this semester, reading your word more than you ever read it using our REAP method, spending time in prayer and worship, resting in your time with God, and by doing all of those things, you can be changed by the word. You see, when you understand that God's word instructs your life, and when you follow that instruction and do it, you will change. Because as you know today, change comes by action. Love you guys. I'll see y'all later. Peace.